Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is a really fascinating exercise in strategic thinking. We are taking a deep dive into a huge seismic shift in professional life. But here's the thing. Our entire source material, it's just a single sentence.
Right, the title of a document.
Exactly, the title of a forthcoming strategic document.
And it sounds minimal, but, that single sentence can be an absolute information goldmine.
Okay, how so?
Well, it dictates the boundaries, the focus, and really the underlying assumptions of the entire piece of research. Our goal here is a kind of intellectual archaeology.
I like that.
Yeah, we're trying to extract every single nugget of context and implication that's embedded in this very careful framing.
Absolutely. The source you shared with us is titled The Future of Work in a Post-Pandemic World. So the mission for you, our listener, is to see if we can extract the core strategic insights just from that.
We should know what the document is about before we even read page 1.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. When a document is this precise, every single word choice is a signal, right?
It has to be.
This title is basically an intellectual contract with the reader. It's promising this high-stakes analysis on 3 distinct but interlocking concepts.
And I think we have to acknowledge the stakes up front. I mean, this combination of words, it signals that the analysis inside isn't about, temporary adjustments.
Like whether we use Slack or email.
Exactly. It points to a critical turning point in global economic and organizational structures. It's an implicit admission that the old models that define work for most of the 20th century are just
Obsolete.
structurally insufficient. Yeah.
Let's start our deconstruction then, maybe with the setting, the context that sort of dictates everything that comes after.
That makes sense. The context frames the problem.
So, segment 1, the context post-pandemic world.
Right.
If we just isolate that phrase, it immediately confirms the source is only dealing with changes caused or these dramatically accelerated by what started in 2020.
It's the demarcation line.
Yes. It separates those long-term, slow-moving trends like automation from the rapid, forced evolution that was triggered by sheer necessity.
And you just can't overstate how necessary that line is. It signals this is not about evolution, it's about a revolution and the permanent structural adaptation that followed.
Okay, so before 2020, you could still apply strategies from 2019.
You could, but the phrase post-pandemic world acknowledges a fundamental, lasting break from historical norms. And think about infrastructure for a second.
Physical offices?
The physical offices. The forced emptying of commercial buildings started this whole cycle of real estate divestment. And once those leases are broken, once companies move to, smaller hub-and-spoke models, that shift is economically locked in.
That's a crucial point. The economic commitment makes it permanent. What about the legal side? I mean, we hear about companies all the time wanting employees back in the office.
Yeah.
Isn't there a risk that this source overestimates how permanent this all is?
That's a good challenge. But the legal and financial reality suggests permanence is taking hold much faster than, let's say, management sentiment.
How so?
Well, when you have a truly decentralized global workforce, companies suddenly face what's called permanent establishment risk, PE risk.
Okay.
This means if your employee lives in a different country or even a different state, your corporate tax nexus might suddenly extend to that location. And managing global payroll, local labor laws, different tax jurisdictions, it's prohibitively complex and expensive.
Wow.
The fact that you see these sophisticated software solutions and specialized legal services popping up to manage all this complexity, that proves this decentralization isn't a fad.
It's a new cost of doing business.
It is a new ongoing cost of doing business.
So the strategies and structures from the 2019 playbook are not just outdated, they're actually legally and financially hazardous in this new context. You're forced to adapt.
Precisely. If the document didn't use this phrase, we might think it was just a general discussion on digital transformation. But post-pandemic locks the analysis into how organizations must manage this radical, non-negotiable decentralization.
That transitions us really smoothly to the core subject. Segment 2, the subject work. The title isn't the future of offices or the future of commutes.
Yeah.
It's the future of work itself. So what does including that single foundational word imply about how value will be created and exchanged?
What's fascinating here is it implies this fundamental transformation of the definition of work. It moves from being a physical input, time spent in a chair under supervision, to a measurable, results-based output, the function you perform.
Ah, I see.
So the title confirms the source's scope is really wide-ranging. It's not just analyzing where people sit, but how they're managed, how they're compensated and evaluated.
So this document is probably going to explore the mechanisms of measurement then. If presence is irrelevant, how do you track productivity without, falling into some kind of oppressive surveillance?
That is the high-value insight we should expect from this source. We're already seeing a widespread adoption of metrics like OKRs, objectives, and key results to standardize output. But
There's a dark side.
there is. The dark side is the rise of these increasingly sophisticated digital surveillance tools that track keystrokes, activity levels, communications. So the challenge this source promises to address is, how do you maintain trust while prioritizing measurable output?
That is a fundamental challenge. Because if work is defined solely by output, what does that mean for the huge portion of the workforce whose value is, well, intangible or highly collaborative?
Like R&D teams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
R&D, high-level strategy, creative roles where, frankly, staring into space for an hour is sometimes the most productive thing you can do.
That is a crucial friction point. This transformation of work forces organizations to flatten. When you lose the physical structure, you lose the utility of middle management, the traditional proxies of supervision.
So what replaces them?
Well, this source must address that. And what we're seeing is the rise of self-managed teams, cross-functional project pods, and highly specialized contract-based roles. I mean, the fractional executive model is accelerating rapidly.
Where a company just buys a percentage of an expert's time.
Exactly. They're explicitly purchasing output, not presence.
So this source material promises to deliver a full blueprint, not just for hybrid work, but for a whole new employment contract where companies trade loyalty and stability for flexibility and specialized results.
Yes.
It's the fragmentation of a job into a series of gigs and projects, even inside big corporations.
That's the essential structural promise embedded in that single word, work. The focus has to be on resilient output-based measurement and how you scale that in these decentralized environments.
Okay, that brings us neatly to the final component of the framing, segment 3, the orientation of the future. This part introduces the predictive and, I guess, the potentially prescriptive element.
Right.
It positions the source as looking past the initial crisis response, the temporary home office, and into the true permanent next phase. It's trying to map out a destination.
Any piece of analysis that puts the future in the title is aiming for the highest level of ambition. It wants to be the roadmap that guides strategic decisions for years.
It has to.
It has to. It needs to define the true next-generation models. So, for example, it has to get deep into the shift from synchronous to asynchronous work culture.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. We've heard predictions about the end of the 9-to-5 and the death of the office since the internet was invented.
The dot-com boom, at least.
Right. So what makes this prediction of the future any different? Why should we trust this source now versus all those utopian visions that never really happened?
That is the right question to ask. What makes this moment different is universal high-speed infrastructure. The failed predictions of the past. They lacked the ubiquitous broadband, the mature cloud computing tools, and, frankly, the cultural shock needed to force mass adoption. The previous attempts were all voluntary experiments. This was forced global policy.
So the future part of this title implies the authors have identified the key technological and cultural tipping points that make this decentralized model not just possible,
but inevitable.
Yeah.
Exactly. And because the source is prescriptive, it has to provide strategies for managing the challenges that come from these structural inevitabilities.
Okay.
So this raises an important question. To what extent are these changes inevitable forces of technology versus, say, manageable outcomes driven by corporate policy?
So the source should be giving us actual models, like how to manage an internal digital nomad program or new protocols for managing time zone overlap.
It must. It has to offer a strong argument, not just reporting what is happening, but detailing what organizations must do to succeed.
So it's an instruction manual for the next decade.
It has to be, or it fails its title. The future component confirms that the source is going to offer models organizations should adopt now to thrive. It's about differentiating the tactical fixes of 2020 from the strategic realities of 2025 and beyond.
Let's pull all three components together now in a kind of synthesis and connection.
Okay.
This deep dive pretty much confirms that the source is targeted at identifying forward-looking structural strategies for the activity of employment, work, specifically within the new, permanently altered global context post-pandemic world.
And this is the so what for you, the listener. Understanding the precise meaning of this title validates your focus. You're not just preparing for a temporary inconvenience or some debate about office schedules.
Yeah.
You are preparing for structural, lasting change that defines the fundamental relationship between a worker and an organization. This title confirms you are correctly focused on identifying permanent operational shifts.
So when a title combines future, work, and post-pandemic world, it's promising essential strategic information for survival and for growth.
It's an implicit recognition that the crisis didn't just pause the system.
It fundamentally rebooted the operating system of global commerce.
That's a great way to put it. The magnitude is clear. This document promises a vision for radically decentralized operations, completely redefined performance measurement, and a permanent, radical lowering of geographical barriers in the labor market.
So what does this all mean? The title, The Future of Work in a Post-Pandemic World, really acts as a precise filter. You should be looking for deep insights into permanent structural transformations in how value is generated,
Moving away from physical presence and toward verifiable, scalable output,
all set against a backdrop of this non-negotiable global adaptation.
which leads to a final provocative thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Given this necessary shift in defining work by output and location independence, are we actually seeing the end of the conventional time and place defined 9 to 5? Or is this all just a temporary, if dramatic, rebranding?
What do you mean?
Well, if the expectation of continuous, measurable engagement remains, even if the location changes, how fundamentally disruptive has the change actually been to the psychological experience of being an employee?
That is a fascinating question to carry with you as you continue exploring this. Thank you for providing us with this incredibly rich source material,
My pleasure.
and we look forward to the next deep dive.